Alright guys, we're going to try this yet again. So we're going to take a different approach. Last time we were running a 5/8 indexable end mill, and while it did make a part, it was really loud, and like I said, while it was cutting it wasn't happy, but the finished product actually looked acceptable. But we're going to try some other stuff. A while back, before we did all this motor swapping and spindle swapping, when we were running our 12K spindle, we knew back then that we didn't have a lot of rigidity and we were having issues, so we had decided way back then to do some testing with smaller end mills. So the one you see loaded in the machine now, this is a 1/4 inch end mill from YG1, and it's got some fancy coating, and quite remarkably they claim that you can run this thing at 22,000 RPMs or something in this type of steel, which is absurd, and this machine won't do that anyway. But we're going to run it at 6,000, which is our max, which is about 25% of what it's rated for. We're going to see how it does. We got all the speeds and feeds. We're matching what the manufacturer recommends. Like I said, we just scaled it back, so it's the same chip load and all. We're going to see what she does. I had to create my own program, which was kind of a pain, but I think I got it. And if it works, this should take about an hour to rough out, and well, since it's a small end mill, maybe it'll sound a lot happier. Anyway, about to find out. Okay, at this point we changed the settings to be less accurate. Spindle 129. Top of the headstock where the roller bearings are, or the ball bearings, 166. Man, look at this machine. It was just throwing chips everywhere, these little baby chips. They're like kind of a metal slash straw color. Really no blue in them at all. Damn, this thing got everywhere. Unfortunately, this cutter makes little chips. They're not totally razor blades, but you can see there's some tiny stuff, so I don't really like that. But let's see how the part looks after I'm going to clean this up real quick. Alright, so this is the part we just machined with this end mill, this little 1/4 inch baby thing. Here's how it looks. That is really smooth for roughing. Now let's be fair. I did make some other changes that I actually filmed it, but you're probably not going to see it. So within the computer, I'll try to show you basically what we did. So I noticed this thing's always been jerky, and I kind of had an idea of what might be causing it. And as you can see, this thing says motion mode, constant velocity. Well, it was already in that mode. And if you don't have it, if you run it in exact stop, that can cause a problem. But here's the issue. When you go over here to constant velocity tolerance, we're at 0.05, and I think this thing's units are millimeters, so that's 0.05 millimeters, I guess. I should probably figure out what that is. Hold on. Okay, that's basically we're at 2 thou. But that's not what it was set at before. It was set to 1/10,000th before. So that means that while it was in constant velocity mode, it wouldn't let the tool deviate more than 1/10,000th from the calculated perfect path. And what that means is, when it's trying to run, it would have to stop and slow down so it didn't screw up. And that would cause all the jerky motion, which actually creates a different problem, where your tool's always starting and stopping. That screws up things. So anyway, we made it 2 thou. So now, whenever it's following the tool path, it's kind of like rounding a corner. You know how like a race car driver wouldn't just follow a curve perfectly? They'd kind of dive to the inside, hit the apex. You would deviate from the middle of the road. Well, that deviation is basically how much I'm telling it can deviate by 2 thou now to try to make a streamlined path. And the result is we get less bumping and jittering. So some of this deviation is actually allowed. So that's not really a problem. But, funny enough, allowing it to deviate basically made it smoother. Now there is one thing you're going to note. You're going to note this line in the middle. This is actually part of the design. So this particular end mill only cuts to here. All this is solid, but I needed to be able to cut. This part is almost 1 inch deep, and this thing only cuts 1/2 inch. So what I did was I cut the first 1/2 inch here, and then I stepped it out a little bit. And this way the end mill, when it's cutting way at the bottom, it doesn't rub here. There's a tiny gap, that gap, which is only like 0.008 of an inch. It's kind of hard to see. But that tiny little distance is enough that the top of the end mill gets really close and doesn't rub. And we should be able to tell it didn't rub, because it should look, yeah, it looks fine. Actually, let's look at this end mill. This is of great notice. Wow, this is, so far this looks extremely impressive. Oh, right there, a little, I don't know what that is. That's a chip. Maybe that's a chip in the coating. Yeah, a little something happened there. Seems to be the only spot. Yeah, maybe right there, a tiny little chip in the coating. Not much damage. That's kind of impressive for how long that thing ran, for how little damage it has. So in the past, when we ran a 1/4 inch end mill, it was basically cached after making one part. This one doesn't look cached. It looks like it's ready to go again. So that's interesting, because that is an expensive end mill, or relatively expensive. And the way we were using it was kind of weird, but that's what they recommend. So I was like, well, let's try. Before I try my own stuff, let's try what they recommend. And it looks to have worked pretty good. We got a good looking part. The only downside is this took a long time. Close this out. It took 1 hour and 23 minutes. Now, admittedly, I stopped the machine 5 or 6 times making adjustments. But even still, that took 1 hour and 10 minutes probably. So it was kind of slow. But on the plus side, we didn't really have to babysit it. It sounded good. The machine was happy. We weren't putting hardly any load on it. So I didn't really care. This upper bearing got kind of warm, but it's okay. The lower one's fine. The spindle's staying cool. So overall, this is acceptable. It's slow, but it's acceptable. Oh yeah, one thing. So we didn't surface the top of this yet. I didn't want to use this end mill for that purpose. I really want to keep this for cutting on the side like we just did there. And so I'll show you what we're about to do. So this one, we faced this off with like a 5/8 indexable. And it didn't do a perfect job, but it did an okay job. We're about to surface it with this big 1.25 inch end mill. So indexable. So one thing I kind of remembered, you can flip these, you can spin these inserts. So if you look, that insert there, that bottom edge is broke. That's the one we broke, but we flipped it over and now we got a new edge again. So we're going to pop that one in there and at least face this part off, because that's the one thing that cutter did well. It seemed to face really nice. Alright, we're going to face this sucker off. See how she goes. Good luck, everybody. actually swimmingly. Kind of crazy how quiet and smooth it is feeding like this. This is acting more like a high feed mill, sort of. At least some of the forces are axial because we're only doing a 10 thou. So some of the forces are pushing up through the spindle. Anyway, it's kind of impressive. Look at that. Beautiful. Smooth. I hardly feel a thing. Very flat. Damn, that's some of the best surface finishes we've ever got on a facing op. Looks like money.